The guests that I have on my show today have been personal friends of mine for well over 10 years here in the city of Portland. Bill Shepard is a prominent attorney here in Portland who has practiced law for over 40 years in the city of Portland, and appearing with him today is his wife, Ann Shepard, who founded Parents of Gays in Portland, Oregon 10 years ago, which is now affiliated with the national organization Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. Recently, in the state of Oregon, we just passed through a storm in the civil rights issues in the lesbian and gay community, and I'm talking about civil rights issues that affects all people. Whenever the rights of any minority are violated and are literally raped, as they were by so-called Christians recently here in the state of Oregon, it affects the rights and the dignity of all people. And my guests, Bill and Ann Shepard, have been in the forefront of fighting for human dignity, for fairness and decency for all people, including the 10 to 15% of the population who happen to be gay and lesbian. And Bill and Ann's daughter, Susie Shepard, has also been very active in gay rights issues and appeared on this show recently, as some of you will recall, when we spoke about street theater. Anyway, Bill, how long has it been since you were aware that your daughter was a lesbian?
Oh, that's been quite a while, and you remember the date better than I do, but it's been, what, 15, 17 years?
Let's see, Christmas time, 1971.
1971. You have a better memory for dates than I do.
1971, so that's about 16 years, 17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what was your reaction when Susie first came out to you as a lesbian?
I think my reaction was typical. I didn't believe it. I thought it was just a passing phase, something she needed that certain man to come along.
The right man would come along and just take care of it all,
Right.
of the lesbian problem. In other words, you felt that homosexuality was sort of a behavioral pattern issue.
At that time.
At that time.
But I knew nothing about it, really.
Mm-hmm. And but you've come quite a long way, though, in your thinking about that since then.
True.
What kind of turned your thinking around on the issue?
Well, this was getting acquainted Susan was always the same before and after,
Oh,
as
yes.
far as we could see, and we got acquainted with a lot of her friends, and they looked just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
We began reading. Ann read a great deal, particularly on the subject,
Mm-hmm.
and pretty soon it became very apparent, so what?
Yeah.
That's all there was to it. They're just, they refer to the homosexual and lesbian lifestyles, but that's behind the scenes, as it were. That's not out front, and these look just like any other people,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them are very fine people, too.
Oh, yes, and a lot of them are church people. And you're
Right.
quite active, I understand, in the Presbyterian Church.
Right.
And so, at any rate, recently, you know, we faced a ballot measure here in the state of Oregon, which was called Ballot Measure 8,
I
where
remember.
the governor's, executive order assuring civil rights for homosexuals in state employment was overturned by what I call Bible-banging bigots. And I believe both of you were quite active in that statewide campaign.
Right.
And what were some of your dealings with it when we were going through this fight against the religious right?
I don't think we had any social events all summer and fall that weren't
Centered around that.
centered around benefits for, to prevent the passage of Measure 8.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked to everyone we knew. Then I went door to door for Bud Clark. I also wore my No on 8 button. And
Yes.
I was able, I think, to help a few of the neighbors.
Mhm.
Just by knowing, well, you look pretty decent and you've got a gay kid. Well, maybe we should vote no on that.
That's right.
People are so ignorant, and they're also so willing to lap up anything unpleasant about anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what the proponents of Measure 8 did was so hitting below the belt line, literally and figuratively,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
they had people terribly confused.
Oh, they did. Yeah,
And they're very evil people themselves.
They are, and their propaganda was very spiteful and evil and malicious and
Untrue.
untrue, totally untrue. Now, the religious right presented the ballot measure as a moral issue. And Oregonians for Fairness, which both you and Bill supported and worked with in fighting this petition, presented it as an issue of discrimination.
Right.
And what are, as you feel, as parents of a lesbian and as people who have been very active in gay rights causes, what are some of the falsehoods that you feel that the religious rights put out? I'd like both of you to answer that question.
Well, as far as on this campaign is concerned, either directly or indirectly, they pretty soon had all the people thinking this was not a matter of civil rights or discrimination per se. It's just a question of homosexuality. Do you like it or don't it?
Whether it's right or
They
wrong.
said it's down with it. And too many people didn't analyze the problem. They didn't really know what this was about.
Right.
So they just thought down to the homosexuals. They voted in favor of the measure.
So they weren't really, the people who voted for Measure 8 weren't really voting, in their minds, they weren't voting on discrimination. By saying yes on 8, they were saying we do not approve of homosexuality, basically.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And,
oh,
well, you know, the gay foster parent issue was one of the biggest weapons,
Yeah,
fear
I
weapons
remember
they
that.
used. And what is your feelings on that as a parent yourself?
well, as a parent myself, I think being a good parent has nothing whatsoever to do with whether you're gay or straight or a man or a woman.
That's right.
In some cases, the father is a better parent than the mother
Yes.
to have custody of the children. And I think, again, that's just another one of the very overripe red herrings that the religious right trailed across the path. What is interesting, though, is that all the establishment churches and ecumenical ministries of Oregon
Yes.
and our own First Presbyterian Church strongly opposed Measure 8. And I was very proud of that,
Yes.
and proud that our own church's session made a firm statement that discrimination was not right, and that homophobia itself was a sin.
Yeah, homophobia is a fear and a revulsion of homosexuality because people fear things they do not understand.
That's right.
And there are, you know, thousands and thousands of people all over the world, gay people, who have, for years, have contributed much to the betterment and enrichment of society. And you know what these people did? They took a small element of gay culture, the street element, and played that up and tried to make people believe that that was representative of the entire gay community, which is just as asinine as taking a few heterosexual hookers, you know,
Exactly.
and saying that all heterosexual women are hookers. And they even described in the voters' pamphlet, you know, obscene sexual practices in pornographic detail as to make people think that all gay people were interested were these, you know, obscene sexual practices, which is also, you know, and the sexual practices they practice, there's a small percentage of heterosexual people who do that too, you know. They took little grains of truth and just magnified them out of proportion. And however, you know, we did lose only on a small measure, you know, statewide. What were your emotions when you found out that this repugnant ballot measure passed?
It was very upsetting because it should never have passed.
Oh, I
But,
agree, yeah.
But unfortunately, those in favor of the measure had gotten the feeling out with people that homosexuality is a choice and not an orientation. If people had realized an orientation, homosexuals have no choice. They're that way, the same as others are heterosexuals.
Right.
It would have been different.
Also, I think the thing that keeps becoming more clear with every time there's any large instance of homophobia is that it seems to me that the people who decry it the most, who slaver over the unsavory practices, probably are doing that because they fear most to look inwardly at themselves.
At themselves.
And how their
Right.
basic orientation really probably is.
Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. The things that people become obsessed with and fear the most and make the biggest issues of, 9 times out of 10 is the very thing that they're afraid of, that they're hiding within themselves. And a perfect example of that is evangelist Jimmy Swaggart. You know, if you know, I mean, he literally ranted and raved, you know, in fanatically against the very thing that he practiced himself in his private life. And a lot of these local people connected with these anti-gay religious groups, you know, and they're also now trying to get a thing into the state legislature on gay parenting, and they also, you know, are attacking people with AIDS also, these same people, you know, and they're doing it in the name of God and religion and in righteousness. You know, it's absolutely frightening. You know, it's similar on a mental level to the Salem witch hunts.
It is.
And also there was an evangelical, what was his name, Olson in Medford. You know, one of these people.
State Senator Bill Olson, yes.
State Senator Bill Olson, a born-again Christian who was convicted, I believe, or admitted guilty to sexually molesting a 13-year-old girl. And these are, you know, and the kind of people that are attacking in others the very thing they either practice or fear within themselves.